You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Well, it's been another ho-hum boring week with no news, eh? We have a packed show for you today. The Surrealism Corner alone is so full it's levitating. And I have two really super guests. One is a woman who created a magazine that's feminist, literary, and probably a first of its kind. And a woman who created a restaurant that's feminist, literary, and probably a first of its kind. They're both terrific. But before we get to any of that, you know where we have to go inside the headlines. I'm afraid we begin with two notes of loss. The bombing of what was, after all, a young girls' concert in Manchester was part of the dreadful new normal. Terrorism is a deeply masculinist phenomenon, and unless and until we address that, the bodies of young female human beings will continue to be considered expendable as victims, and those of male human beings considered expendable as weapons. If I hadn't already written the, to date, only feminist analysis of this kind of violence in my book, The Demon Lover, The Roots of Terrorism, I'd have to write it now because it turns out to have been tragically prescient. I deeply wish it was not timely. A note of personal loss here as well. My friend and feminist sister of many years, Corinne Horble, died on May 15th at age 80. She was a feminist crusader and leader in her native Minnesota and nationally and even internationally, as she served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. It was Corinne who wrote the United Nations Convention to End All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, commonly known worldwide as CEDAW. Political to the end, she was much loved and will be greatly missed. Now, to what's inside those headlines. The Economist reports that according to the 2016 Democracy Index, the number of full democracies has declined from 20 in 2015 to 19 last year. The U.S. has been downgraded from a full democracy to a flawed democracy because of a further erosion of trust in government and elected officials. The U.S. is slipping in another area as well. The Global Health Scorecard, as reported in The Lancet, notes that over the last quarter century, China, Ethiopia, Peru, and the Maldive Islands have made the greatest improvements in deaths avoidable through health care at their economic level. But the American ranking is so low that, quote, it's an embarrassment, especially considering the U.S. spends $9,000 per person on health care annually, close quote, according to the report's chief officer, Dr. Christopher Murray, director of the University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. The highest-ranking nations include the Scandinavian countries and Australia. The United States ranks 35th, worse than many of its peers in curing diseases and in medical mistakes and malpractice. In France, however, moving in an encouraging direction, newly elected President Emmanuel Macron has unveiled a parity cabinet in accordance with his pledge, with women named to half, 11 of 22 of the posts, including that of the powerful defense minister, Sylvie Goulard, plus Agnès Buzyn, Minister of Health, and Muriel Pénicaud, Minister of Labor. We'll deal with the travels of Trump in the Surrealism Corner where they belong. Meanwhile, back home, busy week with no signs of let-up. It's all bubbling to the surface, people, including Jared Kushner. We've learned from testimony before House and Senate committees that Trump made separate appeals to the Director of National Intelligence, Daniel Coats, and to Admiral Michael Rogers. That's meddling with the military, people. Rogers is the director of the National Security Agency, urging them both to publicly deny the existence of any evidence of collusion during the election, while senior White House officials asked whether Coates and Rogers could make Comey shut down the investigation into the conduct of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Rogers documented the Trump conversation in an internal NSA memo. Meanwhile, it turns out that Flynn lied to the Pentagon about his receipt of payments from the Kremlin-backed TV network, RT, and he's now refusing to comply with subpoenas and announcing he'll take the Fifth Amendment and refuse to testify, risking being held in contempt of Congress. During the campaign, of course, Trump proclaimed that anyone who took the Fifth was immediately guilty. Then again, Mike, you cannot take the Fifth for your business or your financial records. It's tempting but premature to start chanting, lock him up, as Flynn chanted, lock her up about Hillary during the campaign. In other lively testimony before Congress, former CIA Director John Brennan told lawmakers he believes the FBI investigation into possible coordination between Moscow and the Trump campaign is, quote, well-founded, and that he'd been worried Russia may have tried to recruit U.S. persons during the presidential campaign. In fact, we subsequently learned that U.S. intelligence intercepted calls last summer in which Russian officials were clearly planning to use Flint and Manafort to influence Trump. CIA Director Brennan also expressed his alarm that some individuals might have taken, quote, a treasonous path. This is the first time that the T word, treason, has been breathed aloud publicly by an intelligence expert, although we mentioned it last week on this program. So Trump, along with pretty much everyone else in his gang that can't shoot straight, is lawyering up with the law firm that represents Russia's largest bank, and his attorneys are researching just how impeachment works. No one in Trump world knows how any kind of government works, or even basic civics. But none of this stopped Trump from laying out his and Paul Ryan's 2018 budget, calling for $668 billion in defense spending, that's $22 billion above current levels, and $479 billion for non-defense programs, which is $57 billion less than current spending. The budget would slash funding for all federal departments other than Defense, Veterans Affairs, and Homeland Security. It would cut $627 billion from Medicaid and $56 billion from Medicare. The budget's already dead on arrival in the Senate, the same way the Trump House health care bill was, even before the Congressional Budget Office found that Trump Care would leave 23 million more Americans uninsured and gave it a thumbs-down review last week. But both Trump Care and his budget exposed the shattered promises he made to his own gullible base. But there's good news. The Supreme Court ruled that 2 North Carolina congressional districts were drawn unconstitutionally, affirming a previous district court decision finding that Republican state legislators in drawing the congressional map packed African American voters into those districts to dilute the power of their votes in other congressional seats. Justices Breyer, Ginsburg, and Sotomayor joined Justice Kagan in the majority alongside Clarence Thomas, an unusual majority combination. Jeff Sessions has had to back down on Trump's executive order threatening sanctuary cities with immediate starvation of federal funds if we don't hand over immigrants for deportation. Some states immediately went to court over this, and Sessions has been forced to narrow his definition of such jurisdictions and to suggest that the Justice Department might attach new conditions to future grants instead. It ain't over till it's over. But for now, it's stalled. And that was even before patriotic leakers at the Department of Justice alerted the press that Sessions didn't disclose his secret meetings with Russian officials during the security clearance process for the Attorney General position. Oops! Since Trump's White House has refused to release visitor logs, Politico.com has created Politico's unauthorized White House visitor logs to stand in for the official record. To build a better, completely public visitor log, Politico compiles not only visits to the White House, but interactions that include in-person meetings with Trump at Mar-a-Lago and other venues, appearances at events, and documented phone calls with foreign leaders and other politicians. Kudos to Politico.com. Check it out. Rise to Run has officially launched. It's a new organization aiming to push young progressive women to run for office. The group, founded by Helen Brosnan and Shannon Watts of Moms vs. Guns, and she's been a previous guest on this show, they will be training high school and college-aged women. This is not to be confused with sheshouldrun.org, which is also good. Take your pick and think about running. P.S. The new Quinnipiac poll finds that 54% of Americans now feel Trump is abusing the powers of the presidency. People, this is moving much faster than Watergate. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and when I come back, we'll be speaking with my first guest, a woman who is young, literary, a pioneer, courageous, a feminist, and a Saudi. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My first guest is Ahd Niazy. Ahd is a young woman, a writer, a student. She's pursuing her undergraduate degree in creative writing and interdisciplinary studies in culture and society at Emory University, and Ahd is the founder and editor-in-chief of Jahanamiya. Jahanamiya is a feminist literary magazine that publishes written work exclusively by Saudi women. It publishes English and Arabic pieces of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction writing. It's a quarterly magazine, and it's beautiful. Here is the courageous, inventive Ahd Niazy. Ahd, marhaba, welcome to the program.
Marhaba, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be invited to talk with you today.
Well, it's a delight to have you here. The first feminist women's literary magazine in Saudi Arabia. You don't do things easy, do you? Tell us how it came to be.
Well, it came to be the way a lot of things came to be. It kind of just unfolded. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I spent almost the first 12 years of my life in the U.S., and then I moved to Saudi when I was about 12 years old. So that was a big transition for me, and a big cultural transition, a big transition as a person coming into womanhood. And I guess I really, that's when I sort of became interested in feminism and women's rights. So it was always something in the back of my mind. And it was something I wanted to do something about, but I didn't know what to do. I was always trying to think of how I could contribute, and I didn't quite know what there was to be done. When I came to Emory University, I started taking classes, learning about the Middle East, learning about different ways that Islamic law was practiced in different countries, and realizing there was more than Saudi and there was more than what I had experienced. And I also was taking creative writing classes at the time, and things just sort of fell together where I realized through one of my classes kind of the power of personal narratives and of women's narratives. And through another one of my classes on Orientalism, I realized how women and maybe even Arabs hadn't been able to tell their own stories because of Orientalist works of art and literature and continued stereotypes, which continue in our media today.
Exactly.
Simplified images of these humans that are real complicated people. So it just came together that I wanted to create a space where women told their own stories, and I made it a small space for just Saudi women to tell their stories, because that's a very, I think, misunderstood society with a lot of complexity that even sometimes Saudis don't embrace themselves.
Yes. What you are doing is at the intersection of feminism, and literature. There are places art goes where all the propagandizing or demonstrating in the world can't. It comes in right under the radar. It goes directly to the heart. In a very tightly controlled society, people can read in private, or listen to music in private, or watch something in private. It can exist in a private realm when there's no access to the public, and when there is access to the public realm, it can thrive there too. And the Arab world, contrary to bigotry and stereotypes in the West and the global North, has produced great literature for ages before there sort of was a global North, including by women. And to know that there's a brand new baby, well, it's not a baby anymore, it's 3 issues in, sophisticated, beautiful feminist literary publication coming of all places out of Saudi Arabia, the home of Wahhabism, is just, I celebrate you. And tell us about the name Jahanamiya.
Thank you. I want you to celebrate the women that are writing for us and not just me, because it's them that are being brave and that are using, stories as a means to share their personal.
A plural you.
Yes. Yes. And I will gladly tell you about our name. Our name was a source of controversy when we first announced the magazine and shared our name, which is Jahanamiya. Jahanamiya is the Arabic name for the bougainvillea plant, which grows locally in my hometown of Jeddah. And it grows on vines, kind of on its own, takes care of itself, and it has these beautiful, brightly colored flowers. And my favorite are the fuchsia ones. There's like fuchsia, pink, and white. And these bright fuchsia flowers are just across town in this desert landscape, and they add color, they add life to Saudi streets. Like I said, they take care of themselves. And most importantly, no 2 of the flowers are the exact same. And this is a metaphor for Saudi women.
It's beautiful.
Who are thought by many people across the globe to be the same. They're all burqa clad. They're all subservient to their husbands. They're all voiceless. They're all the big O word oppressed, And there's so much more to these women than those words and those limitations that exist in the minds of so many. And so we named our magazine after this local plant for that reason. But in Arabic, the word Jahannamiya sounds similar to the word Jahannam, which is the word for hellfire. So a feminist magazine coming out of Saudi Arabia called Jahanamiya, which sounds kind of like hell, was a scary thing for a lot of people. And I remember getting a lot of phone calls from Saudi reporters and people that wanted to talk about, the launch of our magazine. We had a launch in Jeddah. We celebrated it. We had some press there. And I got a lot of phone calls. And this one woman called me, 3 times in a row. And she kept going to her supervisor and coming back and saying, we really want to write about you, but won't you just consider changing your name? Really, what is this name? Why would you name it this? And I was trying to tell people again and again. I was like, it's not hellfire. It's the flower, guys.
Oh, it's very, listen, it's very witty, Ahd. I mean, it really is. See, and this is exactly the kind of thing that literature, playing with words, as I call it, can do, because there's a pun going on that you can deny or affirm or just let sit out there doing its work, that it's on the one hand it's sort of women of hellfire, and on the other hand it's a bougainvillea. What's your problem? And even the bougainvillea metaphor is a beautiful one and works. Tell us about the first 3 issues. The first one was called Arabic Coffee, right?
Yes. So each of our issues has a theme, and this is this exists in order to collect certain stories or inspire our writers to talk about certain cultural things. A big goal of Jahannamiya is not only to break stereotypes and expectations globally about Saudi women, but to explore Saudi culture through their writing and through their experiences. Many experiences often aren't shared publicly. They might be shared privately with family and maybe close friends, but Saudi culture, generally speaking, is a pretty private culture because your reputation really matters.
Yes.
And so you kind of keep your adventures or your silly stories or things like that more to those really close to you and less shared in the public space or dialogue, which means we don't know much about our neighbors, you know?
Right.
So our first theme was Arabic coffee. And this was intentionally our first theme because Arabic coffee is a beverage often used in the Arab world and in Saudi society to welcome guests. So we were welcoming our readers to our first issue. But it also served as a great and really versatile theme because the beverage is also served at a variety of different occasions, from funerals to weddings.
Right.
To personal visits and homes. So we got a lot of different stories based on that theme.
You do a beautiful and very courageous thing in that you've taken a stand that you want to avoid publishing pieces anonymously, and also that you often you build and develop writers because women have not been encouraged to be literary figures in so many parts of the world, and Saudi Arabia is one of them, not the only one. But so you, in effect, do workshops, you help nurture pieces through, and you're doing this all by yourself? You have no help? This is a one-woman show so far?
I have had a lot of help, and I have people come in and leave, but there is not anyone who has continued to be part of the team. There are my mentors and my family members and my friends who have been really supportive and who do help me come up with themes and think of ways we can grow the magazine. But team-wise, it's just me right now. Definitely looking to expand. And regarding the note on anonymity and wanting women to publish using their real names to embrace their identities, that's, again, has a lot to do with Saudi culture and that privacy that exists in the culture and the way that women are often associated with their families.
Right.
She's the daughter of so-and-so, or the wife of so-and-so, or the sister of so-and-so, as opposed to being her own, or being primarily presented as who she is outside of her family, outside of the men in her family. Right. And that segues really well into our second issue, which was about that. It was called Ismik, which is Arabic for your name, referring to a female subject. So we had women tell stories about their names and their relationship to their names. And women's names, just like their identities, are kind of a taboo in Saudi society. As I mentioned, she'll be Muhammad instead of whatever her real name is. Muhammad is the mother of Muhammad.
Right.
So we had women talk about their names as a second issue, and that was, again, kind of a way of starting to get to know these voices and these individuals on a deeper, more personal level. Our third issue kind of stepped more outside those personal boundaries and more into Saudi society and into the culture, and it was about gender relations. It was called Awlad, which translates to boys, but it was about gender relation more largely, about women's relationships with the men in their families and the strangers and their friends, and we invited women to talk about lovers or romantic relationships as well. And we got a variety, a sprinkle of each in the issue, and that's been great. And we have a fourth issue that's currently in progress. We're getting there. And that theme is movement. And it's about movement, physical movement, bodily movement, or emotional movement, or transportation. It's kind of however you want to interpret that. There's a lot to be said about women's movement in Saudi Arabia that's often, simplified to just being an issue of driving cars. Which, don't get me wrong, that is a big issue.
Oh,
and I disagree with anyone who says that we don't need to talk about it or that it's not the most important thing. It is very important. But there are other issues of movement that are equally important and should also be discussed and looked at. Exactly.
Well, I think if there are people in the West or the global North who know anything about Saudi society and women's place in it, if they're completely ignorant, they think it's a group of women moving around like movable bolts of cloth. But but that's just bigotry. But anybody who's paying any attention knows that the two issues that have made it, quote, out into the outside world, of course, are the drivers, both in 1990 and the new attempt to drive for women to drive now, and the guardianship laws, which keep women a minor her whole life. But the interesting thing, I think, the fascinating thing about this is I think that there's a way in which Jahanamiya can go even deeper into the heart and show Saudi women, for who they hold a mirror up to them so they can see themselves in all their complexity and wisdom and full humanity. And the world can too, which is why I think this is so very valuable. Tell us the website. The pieces are published in both Arabic and English, depending on how they come in, right? But you don't have funding for translation yet.
Yes, we're currently unfunded, so we don't have that funding yet, but we publish in both Arabic and English. All of our issues are available at our website, which is Jahanamiya.com. That spelling is a little tricky, so maybe you can provide readers with that? Or
well, we'll also list it together on iTunes and on the website. It's Jahan, Jahan, same word, Amiya, Jahanamiya, and what was it?
Yes.
.com. And it's wonderful. It also is beautifully illustrated.
Our artwork is by regional artists of all genders, so not just Saudis, anyone, from the region and of any gender. And
it's beautifully assembled and beautifully put together, and it's a sign to the world. We're here, we're complex, and we ain't going away. Thank you, Thankra, shukran itir, and keep on doing. Well, keep on doing what you're doing because it's just brilliant. Thank you so much, Ahd.
Thank you so much, Robin.
And now, buckle your seats. It's time for the Surrealism Corner. Oh, dear God, where to begin? With former Congressman and sexter of teenage girls Anthony Weiner crying as he pled guilty to being a sex offender? Or with Billy Bush trying to resurrect his pathetic career, telling the Hollywood Reporter that he'd been doing yoga, thinking deeply, and working with fake guru Tony Robbins, and that regarding the infamous Access Hollywood tape with Trump, quote, "Looking back on what was said on that bus, I wish I had changed the topic. Trump liked TV and competition. I could have said, can you believe the ratings on whatever? But I didn't have the strength of character to do it," close quote. Not maybe spit on Trump and walk off the bus. Not maybe shout at Trump, "You are so not a credit to your sex." Just change the subject. Strength of character? Who are these people? No time, said Alice to the Mad Hatter, or the reverse, whatever. On to the travels of Trump, otherwise known as trumping around. We start in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where even men don't vote, and where rape survivors are stoned to death for adultery. Trump was supposed to use the terms Islamist extremism and Islamist terror in his speech. Instead, he used the term Islamic extremism and Islamic terror. Islamic means anything having to do with the entire religion of Islam. Big whoops. But a senior White House official justified the slip-up by saying the president was exhausted. Well, we certainly can understand that. We remember how, during the campaign, he boasted that Hillary couldn't match his stamina. That's Hillary Rodham Clinton, by the way, who, according to the State Department, was the most traveled Secretary of State in history, who visited 112 countries during her 4-year tenure, traversing 956,733 miles, that's enough to span the globe more than 38 times, and who spent 401 total days on the road. Her dizzying world tour shattered the previous record of countries visited by Secretaries of State anywhere. Stamina. Back to trumping around. U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross lauded the absence of protesters against Trump in Saudi Arabia, apparently not realizing that protests are illegal in Saudi Arabia. Honest, I am not making this up. Much was made of the fact that neither Melania nor Ivanka covered their heads in the kingdom, and that they talked up women's empowerment and entrepreneurism. Saudi women, less impressed. Quote, "All the women that Ivanka Trump met have a guardian," said Aziza Al-Youssef, a 58-year-old Saudi activist who has campaigned to abolish the guardianship rules that keep women permanent minors their entire lives. A retired computer science professor at King Saud University, she was recently rebuffed when she tried to deliver to the government a 14,700 signature petition on eliminating the guardian system. "All these achievements," she said, "depend on whether you're lucky to be born in a family where your guardian will be understanding. If Ivanka is interested in women's empowerment and human rights, she should see activists, not officials. These events show women as powerful and making an impact, but in real life, these women, like Ivanka and the princesses she met with, have been given these opportunities by the men. They did not fight for them. We are fighting to abolish the guardianship system. Have they taken part in it?" No time, Alice. Move on. Can we ever forget that hilarious photo of Trump Saudi King Salman, and the dictator General Sisi of Egypt, all three wide-eyed, bent over, touching a glowing orb in a Saudi tech exhibit. Personally, I did not know whether they were playing Macbeth's Three Witches or Find the Hobbit. Oh yes, Trump and the men all danced together while they played drums and waved feathers. And Trump tried to grab Melania's hand, but she slapped it away. On to Israel, where Trump informed Benjamin Netanyahu that, quote, "We've just come from the Middle East." In their joint press conference, when Netanyahu was asked about Trump's having shared Israeli intelligence with Russia, which made the Mossad really mad, Netanyahu sidestepped, but Trump volunteered. "I never mentioned the word or the name Israel. Never mentioned during that conversation," he said. "They're all saying I did, so you have another story wrong. Never mentioned the word Israel." No reports ever suggested he had mentioned that any intelligence was from Israel. In fact, H.R. McMaster pointedly said Trump did not know the source of the intelligence, and we can believe McMaster because if Trump had known, he'd have shared that information too, just as we now hear Trump bragged to President Duterte of the Philippines about the classified whereabouts of our nuclear submarines. Anyway, do find the clip and watch Netanyahu's face while Trump says he never mentioned Israel to the Russians. In fact, it's always amusing to watch heads of state and government try to hold on to their faces when they stand at a lectern beside Trump. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau almost lost it, and I, for one, have begun writing lots of imaginary bubbles over their heads. As for peace in the Middle East, Trump let it be known, quote, "It's not easy. I've heard it's one of the toughest deals of all." Close quote. Geez, it might even be harder than health care. Trump and Melania and Ivanka and Jared all swayed and prayed at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Not in the same part of the wall, you understand, because the men have a big space at the wall and the women are segregated and have a little teeny-bitty space. I'm missing some details here, but we have a lot to get through in little time, so we have to settle for the fact that in public again Trump tried to hold Melania's hand, and again she slapped it away. Then it was on to Rome and the Pope. Poor Pope. He looked miserable, though I realized I've never seen him not smile until that very moment. He also gave Trump a book, having been badly misinformed that Trump can read. Trump gave him a weird sculpture and pronounced afterward that he thought the Pope was, quote, "really something." Melania and Ivanka, who pointedly wore no veils for Islam, went veiled for the Vatican, blithely oblivious to the fact that by that one double-standard gesture they alienated the Muslim world. Oh, and Melania again, smacked Trump's hand away. Then it was on to Belgium and meetings with world leaders, but that must wait for next week, given my time and space limitations here, and also given the fact that I simply must add this last item, which I cannot resist. A 4-foot by 4-foot sinkhole, a sinkhole, has formed on Southern Boulevard directly in front of Mar-a-Lago. West Palm Beach utilities crews have secured the area and will need to do exploratory excavation. A local notice reads, "Sinkhole! One lane is closed, but the road remains open for now. Please pay attention to signs." Period. Close quote. It's time for another brief pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and coming right up is a conversation with a woman who lives and thrives at the intersection of poetry, politics, and food. Does that sharpen your appetite?
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. This time my guest is Dominique Crenn. It's Crenn. Dominique is a French chef. She has 2 Michelin stars for her restaurant, Atelier Crenn, in San Francisco. Dominique was adopted at 18 months by a French couple from Brittany, and her mother took her daughter to experience all different kinds of cuisines in restaurants in Paris. Her father was a friend of French President Charles de Gaulle, and he would bring his daughter along when he dined with his best friend, a famous French restaurant critic. Well, she grew up with quite a taste for great food. She opened her restaurant Atelier Crenn. She was awarded the Best Female Chef by World's 50 Best Restaurant Awards last year in 2016. And here is the delicious Dominique Crenn. Dominique, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So you are now the world's best female chef, which God knows was impressive enough. But what impressed me even more was that you sort of poo-pooed that and said, I love to feed people, and I long for the day when we don't, break out female chef in such a patronizing manner. And you're known as much for your taking principled political stands as you are for your great food. So congratulations and thank you in advance.
Well, thank you so much. I'm proud of being who I am. Spread the word. It's quite interesting. It's 2017, and we're still having those discussions about the difference between a man and a woman, and the level of work or job or whatever position they need to hold, and it's just really, really sad. But, it started everywhere. It started with the parents. It started with the government.
Yep.
I'm not going to put down any man, but a lot of them, they were brought up a certain way, with a certain way of understanding the world. And that needs to change, and we are here to stay. We are here, we are strong, and guess what? We are badass. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Sexism is in every field, but we're talking about cooking right now. But so most cooking on the planet is done by female people. It's just that that's done without any recognition, as if we were born to do it, and it isn't paid. The minute it becomes paid employment, suddenly you get the concept of chef, and it's all boys. And I always find that interesting. So if something has respect and money attached to it, it must be a male job. Whereas if it's done 24/7 by other people all around the world, we just take it for granted.
Yeah, it's kind of show you the I think the ignorance of a lot of people. It's been like you say, it's in the field, and it's in a lot of field, and I think is what we need to do today is, I'm not here to fight with others. I'm here to inspire and get inspired. And I think dialogue and conversation needs to happen. But we have a new generation. And, the new generation, they didn't grow up like us,
Right.
There is computer, there is a lot of media, they are the future. And that generation, and believe me, and I'm looking at a lot of youngster and young women that are just killing it out there, and we need that. But the men also need to stand up.
On the Women's March, there were a lot of young people, a lot of old people, black, white, young, old, gay, straight, men, women, and that is a very heartening sign. Now
that was amazing. Yeah, that was unbelievable. I took my team to San Francisco, to the march in San Francisco.
Yeah,
that was incredible. So I think what she's telling you is there is a movement out there, and you take away the politics, the government, and the craziness, the crazy talk to others. The core of the people of this world is we want this, and that's very powerful.
Exactly. Talk for a minute about your art and craft of food. I've read that at your restaurant, Atelier Crenn, you begin dinner with not with a menu but with a poem. This makes me want to go out to the West Coast just for that alone. Talk about that.
I didn't go to cooking school, so I have an international business degree, and then I studied economy. So food came into my life in a kind of different way. Mm-hmm. I always, for me, food is a language. It's a way of communicate with others. So, writing poetry, it's powerful because it's words, and when you express things through words, you can really express the way that you want. It's your voice.
Yes.
So I've been writing poetry since I was 4 or 5 years old. I'm not a poet. I'm just writing, I'm just writing word, and it's the way that I can express myself. And I think that there is so much similarity of feeding people and writing and speaking.
Yes.
That it makes sense to me, I think there's a lot of chefs that I've known that when I ate their food is extremely poetic. So maybe they don't put it through the poem, writing a kind of a piece of paper and the writing on the piece of paper. But I think, when you eat, Olivier Rollinger or Michel Bras food, it's extremely poetic. So, I think it was, for me, it was a way of communicate to people and a way of expressing myself. I do not like to write a menu with, today you have a roasted salmon with beautiful asparagus from the market. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's boring.
It's also setting up the tone of what Atelier Crenn is about. Atelier Crenn is not just a restaurant. Atelier Crenn is a feeling. It's an emotion. It's a philosophy. There is a story behind it. The story needs to start somewhere, and there is a middle and there is an end. So everything needs to be connected, and every detail needs to be connected. It's not just putting food on the plate. Obviously, what we're putting on the plate, and hopefully. And I hope so. It's delicious, and is also, it's for you or any guest to come and have a window into my life, and that's very important to me.
How would you characterize the cooking?
Well, it's a very organic way of cooking. Not literally. Literally too. We're using also obviously organic product, but I'm not saying in this way. Like when you're a painter, you have a empty canvas in front of you, and then you have the color, and then you have the brush, and then suddenly you're thinking about something and you start to paint, and it's kind of like that. That's what we do over there. So I don't think you're going to find any dishes that we do anywhere else. Because it's very unique. It's very unique of who we are. The menu, actually, what we're doing right now, it's celebrating us coming to California, understanding California, and him going back to where his root is, which is Mexico. And so what we have done with the menu is, I'm basically in charge of the sabori. So it's I will take my guests through the beauty of California, and then I will make an introduction to the desert sequences, which will be the history of chocolate, which would be the story of the Maya. It's the Mayan history.
Of course.
Doesn't mean that everything would be chocolate, but it would be really a reminiscence and an introduction of what Mexico is about. So it's exciting for us to be able to speak to people in a way. It's like, hey, this is where we are today, and this is the celebration that we want to have, and this is the inspiration, and come and hang out with us. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I tell you, I know that the restaurant's now won 2 Michelin stars, and it's only been open how long?
2011.
11, my God. And that's remarkable. Is there any thought of opening an selfishly I'm asking this, an East Coast branch, or does that detract when it begins to be branches and a chain? Does that somehow detract from the uniqueness?
Yeah, I think we thought a lot about it, and believe me, I'm in love with the East Coast. I love the East Coast. I love New York. I love anything about the East Coast. For a lot of reasons. I love you guys' brain. I think there's a lot of smart people out there, and there's a lot of thinker also, and there's a lot of history also in the East Coast, which is quite lovely.
Yes.
I don't have anything, I'm not going to say when other chefs open all over the world is bad. I'm not saying that. It just, for me, it doesn't make sense for us.
Right.
I think we want to focus on what we're doing, and we want to be there, obviously we have Ahd Niazy, but we also open the little sister, a Petit Crenn also, and we are in the process of opening Bar Crenn, which is going to be a wine bar.
That's all on the West Coast, right? That still is all,
that's all
on the West Coast.
All in San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's all in San Francisco. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we will live in hope, and I will, and the next time I'm anywhere in the Bay Area, I will find my way to one of the Crenn miracle restaurants. One more question. What is your favorite thing to cook?
I love to come home, and sometimes I invite friends, and they bring wine, obviously. Mm-hmm. Just simple grilled cheese sandwich. That's it.
What kind of sandwich?
A grilled cheese. Some brioche, some great brioche, some great French cheese, and some great butter from Brittany, and in a pan, in the oven, and that's it. That's all I want.
Thank you, Dominique, not only for being the world's best female chef, but most of all for being a feminist and being open and honest about that and using the word, and for your own artistry.
Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you very much. And power to the woman.
Power to the woman. Yes. Okay. Merci.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir. Thank you.
It's time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be back in just a moment with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And now it's time for some fighting words. Plans change. I'd intended this week to focus on the alternative to impeachment, the 25th Amendment. That must wait. Right now, it's the First Amendment that needs urgent attention. It's been all over the news, so I won't repeat the details. Last Wednesday, Republican candidate in Montana's special election for its sole congressional seat, Greg Gianforte, physically attacked Ben Jacobs, a reporter for The Guardian. Surprisingly, witnesses Alicia Acuna and her Fox News team stepped up to confirm that, quote, Gianforte grabbed Jacobs by the neck with both hands and slammed him into the ground, close quote, exposing as a brazen lie Gianforte's campaign statement that, quote, aggressive action by a liberal reporter, close quote, had provoked it. The leading Montana newspapers all withdrew their endorsements of Gianforte, who stands charged with assault, but he won. More than half of the eligible voters had already cast early absentee ballots, with Gianforte favored over Democrat Rob Quist in a state Trump had won by 20 points. There was briefly a question as to Gianforte's being now ineligible to assume a congressional seat, but Speaker Paul Ryan made clear he welcomed another Republican, though he suggested the gentleman should apologize. Gianforte did so, but only for the physical brute attack, no mention of the bald lie blaming the reporter. His followers shouted he need not apologize at all, and one told a reporter present he was lucky not to get popped. NRA signs were all over. Still, Government offices had been flooded with phone calls from Montanans wanting to change their early vote. They had been told no. Hey, Big Sky voters, you can mount a recall campaign, you know. We are living in a new, golden, and terrifying age of journalism, thanks mostly to newspapers, that dying print medium, remember? The hourly breaking news competition between the Washington Post and the New York Times, as I've said before, has raised standards for investigative journalism to new heights. That's where the golden comes in. The terrifying comes in because abuse of journalists is escalating, and that's always the front line that authoritarianism must breach in order to succeed. Personally, I've had it easy. As a public feminist, I've lived with hate mail and on occasion physical threat and physical violence in person for decades, so its increase and my own security precautions are so far manageable. Journalists much more visible than I risk a different experience. Newsweek's Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Kurt Eichenwald, who has epilepsy, has endured repeated attempts to gravely injure or even murder him via strobe-flashing gifs, deliberately tweeted at him to successfully induce severe seizures from which he barely survived. This escalation can be traced directly to Donald Trump's rhetoric, his example, and the climate he established. Starting with his campaign, he has consistently provoked rage against reporters, penning the press like cattle at his rallies, urging his followers to jeer at, threaten, and shove them, defending his aides when they rough up reporters, threatening to tighten libel laws, jail journalists, and cease holding press conferences, denouncing stories he doesn't like as fake news, lying media, witch hunts, defining the press as the opposition party, the adversary, and finally, as the enemy of the people, a term not wielded against the press since Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia. American journalism, remembering its frontline position in defending democracy by equipping people with accurate information, has risen to the challenge. It has most of the time acted with great responsibility, unlike Trump, withholding classified details that might harm individuals or populations. Shocked awake by the election results and armed with checked and rechecked fact, it has fought the rumor, gossip, and propaganda that masquerade as news and metastasize across the Internet. I'm proud to be part of that fight. Words have always been my passion and my tools, and while poetry is my rock foundation and fiction my blazing hearth, political journalism has literally and metaphorically fed me, given me the voice to further ideas I hold dear. These crafts are all related. Great journalism is distilled, poetry on steroids. When Jane Fonda and Gloria Steinem and I founded the Women's Media Center in 2005, we knew we weren't the only three who longed to make women visible and powerful in the media, because we knew that half the population's report of reality does not represent reality. Over 12 years, the WMC has been a gadfly, critical of press institutions, including the newspapers referenced above, for coverage, hiring, and promotion practices that inadequately welcome women or welcome men of color. That criticism will not abate as long as it's warranted. But let no one mistake that criticism for anything other than fierce loyalty to our free press and a resolve to improve, broaden, and strengthen its trustworthiness. Thomas Jefferson and the other framers could, and sometimes did, fulminate against the press when they felt coverage was untrue or too true, but they never doubted that an informed electorate reliant on press freedom was as necessary to democracy as oxygen to a citizen. In 1787, Jefferson wrote, "Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers, or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate for a moment to prefer the latter." That's why there is only one profession protected by name in the United States Constitution: the press. Those are my fighting words, Add yours on Twitter, and don't forget to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes Worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.